Did you know that before Spectacular Spider-Man was canceled, there were some major plans for the show to go on under the Disney brand? Unfortunately, that fabled third season and everything that would follow was just not meant to be, and it has gone on to become yet another of the legends of fandom. Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and welcome to Legends of Fandom, where we talk about the fanboy films and shows that almost happened, and my god do you guys love Spider-Man. This is yet another Spider-Man topic that you guys unanimously voted for on Twitter. So you want it, you got it. Now, in order for me to tell you this story, I have to go way back to the beginning. Before Marvel was one of the biggest brands in the world. Before they were even competition to DC. Back when they were just one of many comic book publishers in the United States. For 2 solid decades, DC ruled the world of comics, with titles like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and the Justice Society of America. And in the 60s, it really looked like that dominance was going to continue, with successful reboots of The Flash, Green Lantern, and the Justice Society, which we would come to know as the Justice League. But it was at this particular juncture that everything changed for Marvel, and not only did they rise to be on equal footing with DC, but eventually they surpassed them, and it all started with 3 titles: Fantastic Four, The Hulk, and Spider-Man. The character that would go on to be the highly marketable, merchandisable juggernaut that the House of Ideas needed to move on to the next level. Henceforth, Spidey holds the distinction of being the most adapted Marvel character, especially when it comes to animation. But as far as Spider-Man cartoons go, it's an embarrassment of riches, as there are a lot of good ones. But even then, there is one that stands above the rest, and is universally loved by all Spider-Man fans, and that is Spectacular Spider-Man. Created by Gargoyles creator Greg Weisman, Spectacular Spider-Man was initially produced by Sony Pictures as a promotional tool for their Spider-Man movies. But when the show failed to sell DVDs and action figures, Sony decided to cut their losses by selling Spider-Man's TV rights to Disney. By then, Season 2 of Spectacular Spider-Man was pretty much finished, so Disney aired it on their brand new channel Disney XD. But they barely advertised it, so not only did it fail to move any merch, but the ratings were atrocious. Hell, most fans didn't even know Season 2 existed until the show was added to Netflix streaming about a year later. So of course, Disney quietly canceled Spectacular Spider-Man and replaced it with Ultimate Spider-Man. To say that that show is inferior to Spectacular Spider-Man is a gross understatement. In fact, comparing Spectacular Spider-Man to Ultimate Spider-Man is like comparing a jetpack to a backpack. An empty, flaccid backpack with a broken strap. But as any Spectacular Spider-Man fan that is worth a salt will tell you, Greg Weisman had planned 5 seasons. And now for the question that all of you have been waiting for. What would a 3rd season or a completed series of Spectacular Spider-Man be like? Fortunately, thanks to social media posts by Greg Weisman and Victor Cook, a TikTok stream by series star Josh Keaton, and all the clues that were laid out during seasons 1 and 2, we have a pretty good idea. First of all, with Norman Osborn out of the picture, Harry's mother, Emily Osborn, would have played a more prominent role in the series. And according to Greg Weisman, she would have been voiced by Demona herself, Marina Sirtis. Now, whether her role would have been relegated to just being a parental figure or something more sinister, that is unknown, but with this being a Spider-Man show, my money is on the latter.
You don't think the Goblin could be... Mom?
Late in Season 2, J. Jonah Jameson's son, John Jameson, gets powers, goes a bit nuts, and is subsequently defeated by Spider-Man. This would have led Jameson's grudge against Spider-Man to go from being professional to personal, and him hiring a private investigator named Matt Gargan to follow Peter Parker and discover how to find Spider-Man, and subsequently pay Gargan to receive the physical enhancements necessary to capture and arrest Spider-Man as the Scorpion. As far as who would have voiced the Scorpion, my money is on Nolan North, doing his creepy uncle voice from Retro Replay. Hey, you know the one. Another major villain that was due to appear was the Hobgoblin. This is evident by the brief appearance of Roderick Kingsley, who is one of the parties interested in buying technology to give people superpowers. Presumably, with Green Goblin out of the picture, Kingsley would have used his vast resources to acquire the Hobgoblin's weaponry and the Goblin Green formula. only to use it for himself to become the Hobgoblin and skew all organized crime in New York City to his favor. A few second-stringer villains were due to appear as well. Namely, Hobie Brown, voiced by Charles Duckworth, was due to become either the Hornet or the Prowler. And Morris Bench, voiced by Broadway himself, Bill Fagerbakke, was going to become Hydro Man. As far as how Bench would have gotten his Hydro Man powers, the most popular theory is that Dr. Octopus would have given them to him in order to build up his superpowered criminal empire.
Now then, Arachnid, any last words?
And last but not least, the big bad for Season 3, or should I say final boss, would have been Carnage, voiced by Jackal himself, Matt Frewer. Obviously, it was only a matter of time for Venom to make his return, but for this third encounter, the symbiote would have produced an offspring that would bond with the institutionalized serial killer Cletus Cassidy, that would prove to be such a massive threat that Peter and Eddie would be forced to put their differences aside in order to stop the psychotic symbiote. And while many speculate that the death of Captain George Stacy would have been a plot point during Season 3, that notion remains just that, speculative. Point is, everything we know about Season 3 sounds awesome. Unfortunately, details about Seasons 4 and 5 are pretty scarce. But thanks to Josh Keaton, we know that Season 4 would have focused on a year from Peter's life in high school, and Season 5 would have featured Peter's graduation. But here's when things get really interesting, because according to Josh Keaton, after the animated series concluded, Greg Weisman planned to do a series of animated features adapting some of the more mature Spider-Man stories. Now, thanks to the storylines and characters that were established during the 2 existing seasons of Spectacular Spider-Man, we can extrapolate what at least 2 of these animated features would have been. The first of which could have been the death of Jean DeWolf. Who is Jean DeWolf? She is this police officer right here, whose murder is one of the inciting incidents of one of the darkest Spider-Man storylines in the history of the franchise, which sees New York City under siege of a new murderous vigilante called the Sin Eater, who is hell-bent on killing all sinners no matter which side of the law they're on. This leads Spider-Man to team up with Daredevil to uncover the mystery of the Sin Eater's true identity. Oh, and here's a hint. The Sin Eater's true identity? He appears during the first 2 seasons of Spectacular Spider-Man. Our heroes then must fight with all their might to stop him from killing his next victim, Betty Brant, and hopefully bring this misguided murderer to justice. In my humble opinion, an adaptation of the Sin Eater is long overdue, and I can't think of anybody better to handle it than Greg Weisman.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
And the second animated feature that we can extrapolate, and the one that would more than likely close out the Spectacular Spider-Man franchise, would be an adaptation of the Green Goblin trilogy, also known as The Green Goblin's Last Stand, also known as The Night that Gwen Stacy died. Since the last episode of Spectacular Spider-Man, we knew that the Green Goblin would return, and when he does, he would do so with a vengeance. This storyline sees the 2 epic foes continue their feud with maximum escalation, which unfortunately leads to the untimely death of Gwen Stacy, which in part leads to Spider-Man and Green Goblin's final battle, an encounter which culminates with the Emerald Evildoer accidentally impaling himself with his own glider. To many, this storyline marks the moment when comic books lost their innocence, and because Spectacular Spider-Man mostly focuses on Peter's adolescence, many feel that this is how the series would end, with the moment when Peter transitions into adulthood, begins his ongoing relationship with Mary Jane Watson, and enters the next era of Spider-Man history. Now, in spite of the lack of response from Disney, the desire for Spectacular Spider-Man to return has never died. Hell, the creators of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes intended to have Josh Keaton play Spider-Man on their show. Unfortunately, Disney had them dub Keaton's dialogue with Drake Bell, who played Spider-Man in Ultimate Mother-Loving Spider-Man.
I'm Spider-Man.
What's wrong with your voice?
But not all hope is lost, as the return of Spectacular Spider-Man seems more plausible than ever. as we recently saw Spectacular Spider-Man himself do a cameo in the ridiculously successful Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And now, Disney Plus is reviving the 90s X-Men series, so the idea of reviving another insanely popular show doesn't seem so out of the question. Now, some of you might want to say that this is impossible because Disney is currently producing a Spider-Man cartoon called Spider-Man Freshman Year. And to those people, I would like to remind that Spider-Man is the only superhero to have 2 animated shows on TV at the same time, and both were successful. Because when all other underdog superheroes fall on their faces and give up, Spider-Man can. But what do you think? What would you like to see if they revived Spectacular Spider-Man? Let me know in the comment section below, as we have once again reached the end of this video. So, do you know of any fanboy films or shows that almost happened? Let me know at erod@inbox.com. And who knows, your suggestion might end up being the topic of the next Legends of Fandom. Until then, I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster.